Hi there, this is David and welcome to an overview and primer for the Persona series. Here I want to answer the question of, what is Persona, what is it all about, and what games are in the series? Hopefully after this video you will be an expert on the long-running and sometimes obscure series. Persona began as a spin-off of the mainline Shin Megami Tensei series, which at the time was still stuck in Japan. Back on the SNES, Atlus created a game, SMT If, which had a high school setting, and it was immensely popular. So they decided to capitalize on that, and rather than make SMT into a high school sim, they spun off the Persona series, which first landed 2 years later on the PlayStation, back whenever I was a freshman in high school in 1996. As a huge RPG fan myself, I knew of the SMT series, and I was pissed that it was stuck in Japan, but I didn't realize till later what Persona actually was. Information was just harder to come by back then in the 90s. The parent Shin Megami Tensei series had been, and still is, incredibly popular in Japan, rivaling the sales of both Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy. But unlike those two series, none of its games had ever made it across the pond, more than likely due to its overtly religious themes. So Persona was actually the English-speaking audience's first taste of the illustrious series. But since then, the student has become the teacher, as it's not that often that you see a spin-off series become more popular than the mainline one. Beginning on the PlayStation with Revelations Persona, this set the stage for many of the elements that you would come to expect in the series, such as a high school setting, demonic presences, a deep, dark storyline, multiple party members along with a silent protagonist, and the ability to summon personas, giving you access to supernatural powers. The three personas on the original PlayStation are much different from the other, more well-known personas on the PS2 and beyond. If you were introduced to the series much later, you can pretty well see just how different this really is. Some things do remain the same, that high school, small town setting, where you can explore at your leisure, chatting with your teachers, friends, and other students. But some things are decidedly different, mainly in the exploration and gameplay. In dungeons, you're going to be traveling first-person style, think Etrian Odyssey, while then fighting random battles against demons in a very traditional manner. Just as in all subsequent Personas, you can use melee and gun attacks, and also summon your Personas for magical needs and skills. There are some quirky holdovers from the original SMT series still, most notably talking to enemies and dealing with the phases of the moon, which can help or hinder you, depending on if it's waxing, waning, new, or full. Unfortunately, Revelations Persona was plagued by localization issues, from a wonky translation to some questionable character changes. But most egregious was a complete and utter cut of an entire storyline, called the Snow Queen quest. However, this was cleaned up and reinstated in the PSP release over 10 years later. The second entry in the series, Persona Innocent Sin, was not released in the US due to the fact that not only did it feature a school shooting, but Nazis too. However, just like the first game, the PSP remake was created over 10 years later, where Westerners finally got their first taste of it. There are plenty of changes to the gameplay here, such as a transition from first-person dungeon crawling to a more traditional third-person, as well as a pretty neat rumor system, where you can acquire rumors by speaking with different people and then spread them around town, causing them to become true. Then, of course, dealing with those ramifications. As spreading these rumors causes various demonic phenomena to manifest itself and alter reality, so of course, you need to go and put a stop to this. Battles are still random, but the loading times have been cut in half, and through the use of the strategy command, you can kind of program macros, like in Phantasy Star IV, making battles really a breeze. Fusion spells have been introduced where two characters can combine their spells into a more powerful one, similar to Breath of Fire 4 also. A direct sequel to Persona 2 Innocent Sin is Persona 2 Eternal Punishment, which is actually the third entry in the mainline series. And while this one was released in America for the PlayStation back when, the first part, again, wasn't. This caused mass confusion for many gamers because, it was a direct sequel after all. we were wondering what happened to the first part of the game. Because immediately following the ending of Innocent Sin, the story here now follows Maya, who was a supporting character from the first game, as she confronts and puts down more rumors and demonic threats along with Tatsuya, the hero from the first game. On a personal note, I distinctly recall reading a review for this game in the PSN while I was on break at Publix whenever I was in college, and the headline actually read, "This game lives up to its subtitle." Needless to say, the review did not sell me on the game, and it actually reinforced my decision to avoid all of these Persona games. Thankfully, and to their credit, Atlus went ahead and re-released this one as well on the PSP many years later, along with new scenarios and added quality of life features, such as fast forwarding. Unfortunately though, that PSP release never did reach America, so while we got this game on the PlayStation, we didn't get the remaster. Roughly 8 years later, I graduated college, and I was making real grown-up money teaching school. So of course I was buying every RPG I can get my hands on, except that is for Persona. I guess old biases die hard. But by this point, the internet was in full swing, and I was able to get my reviews and news from many different sources. And I had read a ton of great stuff about Persona 3, but again, I still avoided it. That is, until the re-release, Persona 3 Fez, came out. At this point, I figured, okay, this must be a really good game if they're going to re-release it as a director's cut, featuring new content and an added epilogue. I've just gotta go ahead and give it a shot. So, here we are, back in 2008, 12 years after the franchise first entered the American market, whenever I was finally really and truly introduced to the illustrious series. With the jump from the original PlayStation to the PlayStation 2, Persona got a much-needed overhaul and coat of paint. You still have your basics of a silent protagonist, a small town, and a high school setting, but many more gameplay mechanics were added here, such as social links and bonding events to increase your powers with your personas and party members. A sort of time system, where you can choose what to do each day. Do you want to go study and get some better grades? Do you want to go to clubs, hang out with your friends, or go shopping? Or just beat up some demons over in Tartarus? It's all up to you. I mean, as long as you get it done in time. Unfortunately though, the main dungeon Tartarus is randomly generated, which is a major downfall as far as I'm concerned. But, to its credit, encounters are on screen now, and the innovative press-turn combat system first introduced in Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne was now brought over to the Persona series. All these new little additions really allowed the franchise to leap forward and break itself out of the mold of just another generic JRPG, because at this point, it was firmly cemented into gamers' consciousnesses as something special. Just as the original Personas received their PSP remakes, so did the third. Now, featuring new enhancements, such as a female playable character, and the ability to actually control all of your party members in battle, rather than having them be controlled by the AI. That was huge. And this here is the version that's going to be released on modern consoles now. Persona 4, actually the fifth entry in the mainline series, came out for the PS2 as well. But, rather than being set in a large town, you're now in the sleepy, rural, agricultural town of Inaba, where a series of murders are taking place related to the realm known as the Midnight Channel. So of course, a bunch of high schoolers have to go out and solve the mystery, Scooby style. Basically, Persona 4 is the third game just kind of cleaned up, polished, and shined. The characters are much more nuanced and fleshed out, and you can actually control them now during battle. The dungeons are meticulously designed and no longer random. And all the all-out attacks first introduced in Persona 3 are much easier to pull off, making combat simpler, quicker, and more fun. The social aspects first introduced in the third game are polished to a shine as well, because whereas in the previous game your attributes were pretty much only used to meet new people, here those attributes that you work on during your social links allow you to actually improve yourself as a person. And this is key as well, because the margin of error for maxing out your social links is now much more lenient. In the prior game, you pretty much had to follow a guide to the letter in order to max out all those links. About 4 years later, for the PlayStation Vita, Persona 4 The Golden was released, which had added content, such as the new character Marie. additional personas, character outfits, and more social links, as well as some neat cutscenes. Thankfully, again, this definitive version is the one that's going to be released on modern consoles as well. And finally, Persona 5, the sixth and thus far final entry into the main series, came out back in 2017 for the PS3, PS4, PS5, PC, Switch, and Xbox. Topping the majesty that was Persona 4 was a difficult task, but I think that Atlus did it. Everything that you know and love from the prior games is here, from the social links, to the press-turn combat system, to the fantastically designed dungeons and characterizations. But now it takes place in modern-day Tokyo, and the story is told through a series of flashbacks, as your hero, the Joker, is interrogated for assault and subsequently expelled from school. So you kind of go back in time, and you figure out what actually happened. Rather than dealing with rumors, or midnight hours, or murderous television shows, you're now the leader of the Phantom Thieves, and you set off to steal the treasure of people's hearts to free them of their demons and make them better people. As you're off exploring the metaverse and diving into each person's palace, you really are changing their hearts and minds and causing changes to happen in real life at the same time. It's a really well done system, and Persona just keeps on getting better and better with each iteration. I do know that many franchises ebb and flow. Sometimes they'll have a great game followed by a crummy game, but not Persona. This one did start out slow, but it hit its stride with the third, and then it took off running, and good on them. Let's hope that these turn-based, story-driven RPGs can still survive in these turbulent times nowadays. So, that's it for my retrospective and overview and primer of the Persona series. How do you like the games? Which are your favorites? Let me know in the comments. And if you like this video and wanted to hear on the channel, please consider following me over on Twitter, supporting me on Patreon for exclusive videos and early access to my content, heading on over to Twitch for some streaming fun, or coming on over to my Discord to chat and hang out. The links to them all can be found in the video description. This has been David, and if you like this, please like, comment, and subscribe, and have a good day.